two things are to report on our candidates, nominees for the Conservation Commission. Ordinarily, Leo would, as our liaison, would cover that, but he says he's recusing himself for reasons that will become obvious in a minute. And the third thing was I had some questions about the warrant articles, but to start with, a group of people this is about videoing the business meeting, and it's not a campaign stunt, although I'm running for select board since election will be over. The idea is just to run an experiment to see if we can stream that meeting successfully in the times of COVID, in appreciation for all you guys do, the budget committee does, and for the safety of the people in town. I'm part of a group of private citizens who's contacted Flume Media, who's a Lancaster company, and they cover a lot of sporting events. They do, I think, the Littleton Town Meeting and various other town functions. And pardon me if I'm repeating, because I think I forwarded some of this information to everybody. So the idea is to broadcast a meeting so everyone can see it. And there's a lot of things about the business meeting that are fairly complicated, like how would you vote on warrant articles, et cetera, et cetera. And all of that has been addressed by House Bill 1129, Chapter 8, final version. But it's not our intention to get involved in that kind of complicated thing. We just want to make a simple effort to provide the town with an opportunity to see whether this can be done successfully and conveniently. And so that it will be paid for by anybody who wants to contribute to the group. The total cost is said to be $850. And so Mr. Fillion, I think, has contacted you, Ed Sampson and Charity.
I got an email from him today.
Yeah, and what is one of the things he asked was if the town has a PowerPoint presentation or anything that they want included, it could be put up there. But what's contemplated, simple gavel to gavel coverage, cameras, streams, no Howard Cosell commentary or anything like that. And
he was going to check with the school to see how the setup was that utilized his equipment in the small.
yes, and he says that he does work for the regional high school, and he doesn't anticipate a problem with setting it up. One of my concerns was I didn't want it to look unprofessional or in any way interfere with the course of the business of the meeting. And he said the way they do it is they set their cameras up out of the way, have a couple of people to run them, and they have a little slave microphone that can either go on the moderator's microphone and on the one that gets passed around, or it can tap right into the school's PA system. So it should be unobtrusive. And the whole idea is to see if it's something we want to do in the future and if it can be successful. And so I'd like to ask if you have any questions about it. Some answers I may know, and some we'll have to refer on down the line.
I may want to make sure he reaches out to the moderator, make him aware in advance of that, or we can make him aware.
Okay, that's a
Not
good
that I don't think there'd be an objection, it's just that the moderator kind of is the boss of the day.
And that's J-Rep.
They
Yeah, that would be an important courtesy. And so I guess
what's the gentleman's name?
His name is Chad Fillion. He, think he showed up at town meeting a couple of years ago to pitch the idea.
Budget meeting.
And his office is upstairs in the George M. Stevens Insurance Building. So, and he lives on Winter Street. I think that's right, he's a local man. And I don't know if any of you follow high school sports or whatever, but his company broadcasts a lot of the local games, and I think they'll do a professional job, which is why we were interested in talking with them. So I have, I guess I've emailed to everybody what Chad had to say about what he can do and how he can help us. And I do have copies, if you're interested, of that House Bill 1129, which basically addresses how do you vote on warrant articles and make sure that whoever's voting is a legal citizen and entitled to vote. And it basically involves a drive-through procedure for the ballot. And the first question on the ballot is, does the town approve this process? And so if that didn't pass, that first question, then whatever answers anyone had put would be null and void, and then the warrant article session would be addressed later. Now, I think that's short notice and kind of complicated for all of us to arrange. I think it can be done. If you're interested, we'll approach it. But what we're mainly going to do is record the meeting, stream it live. Apparently it can go over public TV. There's some sort of cable agreement.
Probably Granite State,
Which
I think Flume owns as well. I'm not sure, but yeah.
Yeah, it's part of public access, and any cable company has to provide access for that kind of programming. And I think the town receives some compensation from the cable company for that. I don't know what the details are, but I think that.
You're boring the dog.
Oh, yeah.
No.
Well,
No.
that's a hint. You see, that's one of her
She thinks
jobs.
Alan's holding out on her.
So, would you like me to go ahead and talk about the candidates for the Conservation Commission now? Get the wind out of my sails right away?
I don't have any problem with streaming the meeting and stuff, but I think you're correct in that we're a little bit late to be adding the drive-in thing and stuff for voting. And it's gonna be confusing enough for the town residents where we're doing elections one day and the warrant articles another.
Right.
So I have no issue with live streaming it, whatever, but I think adding that voting thing into it just is more complication than what we can deal with this year.
That was
That's
what
my opinion.
I asked Chad about doing it, and when he started explaining it, it just sounded like if we had 2 months to plan this, that might be a better idea. But this way, let's just see how the streaming goes, see if that works out. So that's the essence of that. If you have any, later on, if you have any questions, there's a whole series of things that they do in Littleton and other places to try to make the voting possible and accommodate a lot of people. But like I said, but it's 2 weeks away, and this is not the time to load Charity up with a whole new set of experiences.
And someone who observed a meeting that they tried to do that on, with about 400 people on it, it turned into total mayhem and a complete disaster.
Right.
So,
And that's a Zoom meeting where you have people calling in and all that sort of stuff, yeah.
yeah, and
So-
it, like I said, it, good possibility can be done, but I don't think we're
It's too late in the season to start it, I think.
to start planning it,
And so exactly what it should be is gavel to gavel live stream. When the meeting starts, the broadcast starts. When the meeting ends, the motion, then it ends. And I believe there'll be a recording of it too, so that can be archived. Certainly would want the town to have it. And so that's what's up with that. Are we ready for conservation? Okay, well, we now officially have two slots open. We have our chair, John Riccardi's slot, because he resigned in October. And then Kim Vara indicated she's not re-upping this time, so the meeting that we had the other night was her last meeting, because the next meeting will be after the town meeting, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Or maybe before, but she's not coming to the next meeting. So we advertised, we had 4 replies. We heard from, and I have copies of the letters of interest, with the exception of Margaret Hobson's, because I believe that's in Alan Ryder's possession and he's in Maine, so. But essentially, I can tell you what she said was, I'm a Lancaster resident, I'm very interested, I don't have any particular experience, but I would like to serve the community. And I will comment that she was the first one to apply, and she's the one that came to a meeting and observed, so she gets extra credit for that. Then the second one, a man named Greg Burry, I think I'm pronouncing it right, B-U-R-R-I, and he's just recently located to town. He says he moved here because of all the lovely outdoor stuff. He has a background in public safety, and he has no particular experience or familiarity with Lancaster, but he's interested in serving. The third application was from Nancy Southworth, who has served on the commission in the past, and her family has given some of the conservation easements, et cetera, et cetera. And she lives out there next to Garland Brook, et cetera, et cetera. And she says she's pretty sure she wouldn't have any conflicts with the meeting time. And the fourth application was from Eric Livingston, lives on, I think it's Grove Street, and he comments that he's a lifelong resident, lives at 6 Grandview Drive, I'm sorry, not Grove. His father, Charles Livingston, along with my dad, were founding members of the commissions in the 70s. Says he has no other agenda than serve the best interests of the town and its people. Now, his background is he works at Weeks Hospital. He's semi-retired, but he works in information technology and accounting, so he's got kind of a helpful financial background. And our deliberations, and again I will comment that Mr. Enos recused himself because of family interests, but we voted that we would like Margaret Hobson and Eric Livingston to be our nominees to you for your consideration. We felt it was important to have kind of a blank slate was a good thing. Margaret wouldn't come in with a lot of prejudices, and she said, express some enthusiasm, and you know, don't want to end up being just a good old boys club. It's nice to have a few women on board. So we're looking forward to having her and Eric. One bad thing about Eric was when his dad was the first chairman of the commission, and they were cleaning up all the wrecked cars around town. Well, they put him driving a town truck to haul cars off of the farms. And he never really had done that. And he got halfway down Main Street and dumped one of the wrecks in the middle of the street. And but he drives better now, and we're not hauling junk cars. So that's our report, and so we humbly submit Margaret Hobson and Eric Livingston as our nominees for your consideration and approval. Do you have any questions or anything?
Yeah, I got a statement, is that the one that isn't gonna re-up should be replaced, should be appointed by the new select board with a new member on it. That's historic, that the newly appointed, whoever it's gonna be, obviously it's not gonna be Leo, but, for one that isn't re-upping, that's presently on the board, her position shouldn't be considered until your first meeting after the town meeting, correct?
Yeah.
So if you only got, with that in mind, you only got one to do tonight?
If that's the determination, the select board is in charge of appointments and stuff, and that sounds like it makes sense.
Town meeting,
Yeah.
I believe.
He could be the interim replacement, subject to appointment, for the next year.
Yeah,
Right.
and that's the way it normally works. So Leo shouldn't sit here, not saying they shouldn't, I mean, he shouldn't sit here tonight, doing that, because she hasn't technically yet done her position yet, it's not done till in the
Is
year.
there one more meeting before town meeting?
It would be the day before.
Yeah, the 8th. You're talking about the Conservation Commission?
Yeah, it's the second Monday, right? Yeah.
Yes,
And
yes,
that's
so
the day before.
the night before, yeah.
Library's the same thing.
So I guess one thing you could do is accept do an appointment tonight, and then acknowledge that there's another nominee, and that there's a pool of applicants we can reconsider. And if you want, we'll even reopen it for consideration, if that's the appropriate thing to do.
Hate to keep spending money advertising.
Well, I'm sorry, a point of that, so usually every year about this time, I put an ad in the paper for, because terms of the planning board, zoning board, all the boards, even conservation commission expire. So I did reach out to Alan last week to ask him if because I was putting that in and asked him if he wanted me to leave the conservation commission in there, so there will be an ad in the Democrat tomorrow. Alan said, yeah, keep the conservation commission in there, because
Great, great.
even though Kim's term expires, there is one more, I don't know who it is on the board, their term expires too after town meeting. You have two people whose
I
terms
guess
expire.
that would be true.
So I don't know whether whoever that second individual, I don't even know whether Kim's actually, her term didn't really expire until later, but
Kim is confusing because there's two different descriptions of when her term ends, but she says it ends this year.
yeah, I don't think it does.
But she can leave anytime she wants, certainly.
I don't
Of
think
course.
it
I
does.
mean, pretty much if she decides she's done, she.
Right.
Yeah.
But anyways, there is an ad in the paper tomorrow
Okay.
that is seeking interested parties for even the Conservation Commission, planning, zoning.
We know for sure that we have one position that's open that this board definitely has the purview of appointing. And we have two that have been recommended by the Conservation Commission. The, 50-50, I'll make a motion to appoint Margaret Hobson to the Conservation Commission.
And I'd, if I may, if it's appropriate for me to comment.
No, there you got a motion, I'm recuse myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just so I understand, she is replacing somebody that's this side
She
of
would be replacing.
John Accardi.
John Accardi,
who's-
that's not, his term is not up after.
Correct, he resigned from the commission in October.
And as I understand it, she should be only filling the remainder of his term, is that
His term.
correct?
Yeah, right.
I'll second that.
So we got a motion and a second to appoint Margaret Hobson to finish out the term of Joan Arcardi on the Conservation Commission. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Obviously not, so the ayes have it.
Okay,
And we will take up the other one after town meeting, or,
you'll have two to take up at that point? Is that how I understand it?
yeah, and if the current member wishes to be reappointed, should probably send us just a quick note that it
Right,
wishes to
if you
remain
have
on
it.
it.
Mention that in writing is usually the procedure. isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so what I will report to the chairman then is that Margaret Hobson has been nominated, or the select board has appointed Margaret Hobson to the commission, and that we have two more slots coming up. I got it right?
I think so, yeah.
Great. Well, my third question on the warrant article, is this a time that I may ask that, or do you want to wait?
No, go ahead.
Okay, the most expensive warrant article item that I saw was number 20, which is $1 million expenditure on a water tank. And as I understand it from my questions at the budget meeting, that tank would go up there on the town water plant. And the purpose of the tank would be so that if for some reason there was a pressure drop because of fighting a fire downtown or whatever, there would be water available to keep the pressure and availability up to those users who are directly drawing from the facility. I wasn't sure who those were, but Tim said that that would be Weeks Hospital
And Forbes Farm.
and Forbes Farm.
Well, those are the two big ones, but yeah.
Well, I haven't, and so I asked the question, well, okay, the $1 million, 750,000 of it's supposed to come from a Northern Borders grant. And the 250,000 is supposed to come from the unassigned capital fund balance. So that, of course, that money could be returned to the taxpayers to lower the tax rate, or on the other hand, it could be used to build a tank. So this is,
That's just not to actually lower the tax rate, because I don't understand, it might lower the rate of the water rate or the, for 1 year, because them are separate funds.
well, this isn't a fund.
No,
This is
he's talking
unassigned,
about the money
the
from
warrant article
unassigned
reads the
fund.
unassigned fund. It doesn't say the capital reserve for water or anything like that.
I'll go ahead and speak to that.
So,
I was gonna follow up with you,
Yeah.
your question as far as that. It's anticipated and highly likely, it's only going to happen, number one, it's only going to happen if we get the, Northern Forest grant.
yes,
And if we do, the town has got the money for the match. But that that cost will be split between the hospital and the town. So it will not be 250, it would be, at worst case, about $125,000.
well, I have several comments. Barbara Peasley, who happens to own all the land around the plant, was very interested in this, because she hadn't heard anything about it, and her farm depends on water coming off of Garland Brook. That's where, it's downstream from our town supply, but she was concerned about it, and she works up at the hospital and hadn't heard anything about it. I asked the question in the budget meeting, well, how would it be paid for? Is there a contract in place with the hospital guaranteeing the $125,000 match? And the answer is no. It will just be whatever the meter reads when they take water out there. So I didn't understand this very well, and that's one of the things I'm asking. You know, if there was a contract from the hospital guaranteeing that the taxpayers would get $125,000 coming from them, that would be one thing. But when I spoke with Scott Forbes yesterday, he said in the 26 years, they have never needed excess water, and that they personally paid for a 6-inch water line to be put in up to where they are, with the agreement that if the town ever wanted to extend it to the Grange, they could. But he was very concerned that if the way it was gonna be paid for was through the water meter rate, and he says in his business, well, most people, if the water goes up a penny a gallon, it doesn't matter, but in his business, it matters very, very much.
It doesn't matter nearly as much because their rate is significantly less. It's based on millions of gallons of usage.
Correct, except that when he calculates, you know, how much feed and all, cost per pound for his critters, he's using that lower rate in his calculation. So if it goes up a penny, I'm just telling you what Scott said.
Well,
He said
Rob,
he was
I don't-
afraid.
I don't dispute what he told you, but I know there has been multiple times in the years past where the pressure dropped so that we filled all of the little ports in his melting pile full of mud.
Yeah,
And,
well, he didn't say that.
big money
Yeah.
and time lost when that happened, and it happened more than one time.
Yeah.
If you lose water. It is not to benefit the hospital, it is not to benefit him, it's all of those water users and the town in itself. If there's some catastrophic event at that end of our 1-million-gallon tank,
Yeah.
that we're not going to be able to provide adequate water throughout town. But most importantly, it's adding to the storage capability out there. It's anticipated to be upon properties of the town, it does not draw water from any of the water sources provided. It's the same amount of water is gonna go through our filtration plant, and it's, sand filtration, it's all in place now, but the storage capacity is going to be increased.
Okay.
And it's a thing that's been, wanted and discussed many times in recent years, and the only way this is going to happen is if we are lucky enough to get the Northern Forest Grant to initiate, the cost of it, that we'd end up paying, I'm anticipating, up top $150,000. $150,000 is a lot of money, but for
250.
what we can accomplish, it's peanuts.
Well, so, again, I don't know what to think about it, but I couldn't get enough information out of the Warrant article. And now what Scott mentioned is he says, well, if it looks like that you've got a big tank up there on the hill behind where the sand is stored, and you can
gallons.
fill that tank up there, and there's a pit that you can fill. So he was concerned.
That has nothing to do with, the pit is no longer in use. That was a rubberized cover over a dirt floor.
Yeah, I looked at it the other day, and I wouldn't want to drink out of it.
We installed a 1 million gallon tank, which is providing the primary sources of water to the municipality. We have an additional tank up at the top of the industrial park.
Yeah.
That is an in-ground tank, which would be the same type of tank that would be installed out at the headwaters.
Right.
Has, Scott Forbes or Barbara Kingsley Smith contacted you?
No.
So,
No, there's been no discussion with any property owners until we know that we're going to move forward with it. And,
Well, of course, the conservation easement on half of the property up at the town water plant, so the Conservation Commission and DES would have to be, and of course, they would probably anyway, because it's a water deal. But from a financial point of view, the way I read it, we're putting up together a contingent deal on getting a $750,000 grant from the Northern Board, right? It won't happen if the grant doesn't come through.
That's correct.
But there's a special provision, 36(7), whatever it is, that allows you to do this for 5 years instead of having it lapse and have to be reapproved every year. So the way I read it, we are encumbering $250,000 of our unassigned fund balance for a period of 5 years. And so if we can't use it for anything else, and when I added up the warrant articles, our unassigned fund balance is on the order of $1.6 million, 14.3% of our budget. And the warrant articles add up to 1.2 something million dollars. So that's sort of, if we're encumbering and spending all of that unassigned balance, that takes us down pretty low. And I don't have an opinion, I'm just wondering, you know, so does that tie up $250,000 of our unassigned fund balance? Does that affect our cushion, and how does all this work out? Now, I gotta tell you, I'm one of the first in the world to chase a grant when I think there's some money that we could bring into this town and do some good. So I'm not coming from there. I'm coming from, couldn't really understand from this, and I called Dana Southworth on the budget committee, partly because his business has water rights there and it shares the dam and everything, and he couldn't clarify it. And he didn't think people had focused on it very much. So I just wanted to know how it all sugared off. And now I think I know that it's contingent, but I am worried that we're tying up $250,000 of our cushion. And the idea is just to run an experiment to see if we can stream that meeting successfully in the times of COVID, in appreciation for all you guys do, the budget committee does, and for the safety of the people in town. I'm part of a group of private citizens who's contacted Flume Media, who's a Lancaster company, and they cover a lot of sporting events. They do, I think, the Littleton Town Meeting and various other town functions, and pardon me if I'm repeating, because I think I forwarded some of this information to everybody. The idea is just to run an experiment to see if we can stream that meeting successfully in the times of COVID, in appreciation for all you guys do, the budget committee does, and for the safety of the people in town. I know the park said it was going to be for Forbes and hospital, I think it was Tim or somebody like that. And my inquiries at the hospital, such as they've been, don't indicate that they're ready to enter into a contract, or there's any firm. Go ahead. All right, so I'll listen.
I guess my question is, and I don't know, I know there's pressure problems up on top of the street by where the so-called townhouses are up there.
Portland Street?
On Portland Street. Is this gonna also improve pressure up there? Cause I know that's been an issue for a number of years, and I'm just not sure.
It's my understanding that the hospital is on board with this.
I've met with the hospital.
I have an email
Right.
as well.
Yeah.
Rob, I want you to think about it, it's a 500,000 gallon tank that is going to benefit everybody that lives out east. And why I say that is fire protection,
Right.
all right? They're gonna have 500,000 gallons of water available
Yeah.
to them,
I mean,
that they don't, a million, right?
Million, yeah.
Is it, I thought it was only 500,000,
Says $1 million in the Warrant article.
what is it?
I have-
The million is
Is
the
the
money.
number.
Dollar amount.
Right, it's 500,000
Oh,
gallons
I'm
last
sorry.
time.
It's a half million.
Yeah.
Dollar signs, gallons, what's it?
So for everybody to get all excited about it,
Yeah.
I would think that out east people would be ecstatic, because it helps their fire protection. They're in an area that tankers are about the only, they do have a hydrant there, right by Alden's sawmill,
Yeah, yeah.
but that's only hitched to up there, so they're only gonna get 8 inches of water, and then they're gonna pull sand and everything
Sure.
out of there, right?
Yeah.
So, with this tank in between, it's gonna serve that area for fire protection, it's gonna serve for future growth for the
Yeah.
town of Lancaster. Anything on that line, out east, all the way down to North Road. The hospital will benefit, the town
Well,
down here will benefit.
See, I look at it as a taxpayer who's not gonna benefit, because I'm not on town water,
You know?
and I'm gonna have to, that's gonna be in my tax rate. And I don't see that there's a firm commitment from
But
either.
it's not gonna be in tax rate if it comes from the unassigned fund balance.
Oh, it's in where do you think that came from?
Well, yeah, but I'm saying, I'm just
Last
saying.
year's taxes.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying, but you don't have a problem spending it for something else.
Well, I do, because
But-
I think one of the things that it can be spent for is to reduce the tax burden. It's the line right after that on the state form, it
Well,
says.
that's a balancing act that the town is trying to.
Right.
Trying to go, because we still have infrastructure we still have to protect, and we also wanna look forward to the future for future growth.
Right,
So there's a fine line that we've gotta walk,
yeah.
and when we can do something for, like, Ed says $150,000,
I'm not sure how it gets to 150, I
it's
sure see it
pretty
too.
simple.
too.
750 for the grant.
Yeah.
125, okay.
Yeah.
So 125, the hospital's gonna split the other difference for the
Well,
250.
When I asked if there was a contract with the hospital, they
This
said
is
no.
premature, you know, sometimes you have to take a walk of faith before you can put stuff in writing. So everybody's on board, little handshake. You know, the hospital is doing some engineering right now on their nickels and stuff like that. And writing I mean, everybody is working very closely on this project to try to get it through.
Well, what I'm getting
And
from
try to
what
get
you-
it for the cheapest for the town of Lancaster.
what I'm getting from what you're saying is a lot of thought has gone into it.
There's been a lot of thought.
From my perspective, all I saw was Article 20,
And I
we're gonna
understand
spend $1 million bucks.
And I understand that.
And it's not gonna,
Again-
it's gonna hurt my tax rate.
Yep, and again, maybe we should have explained it differently.
Right.
And that's a lot of the problem that everybody has.
Well, the article pretty much says.
Well, yeah,
what's going to happen.
but personally explain it, how it, you know, instead of
Yeah.
you going to see Scott, you're gonna see Barbara, go to the hospital, you know, make your rounds, not fully understanding how it all was already laid out.
Right, well, that's what I tried to do,
Yeah,
is do my
and
homework.
I can see where that got
And
screwed up.
also, it's the largest, it's the biggest slug of money.
Well, it is, as far as sticker shock, seeing
But
it,
it's not
but when you
all.
take that grant of
Yeah.
$750, and you only have to look at the $125,000.
Right.
I do know with the water capacity that we have for storage right now, in my opinion, is we are lacking another 500,000 gallons. If you have a major
Event.
conflagration,
Yeah.
a major fire, it doesn't take much before we are scrambling,
Yeah.
sucking out of the river there right now.
Yeah.
That reason alone
And-
would lend me to support the project, even if the hospital wasn't.
And
gonna
some
kick
good
in
new
on it.
information was, I had no idea how damaging it could be. I don't know how many they milk out there, but if you had to fix all your,
Oh, yeah.
you know, clean and refit all your milking machines, and that's an important business. Ford is an important
Well,
business
that's
in
his
our town.
livelihood. That part of it, the milking, is his livelihood.
Sure.
And you
It did
contam-
happen.
And when you contaminate his milk and his lawn, everything,
We had to hook a fire truck out there and run it for months during a freeze-up one winter that, to circumvent the frozen section.
I can only tell you what Scott told me, and he didn't.
Let's,
say it.
let's rephrase
Pretty
that.
well that those,
Not gonna freeze up,
those
those
ports are
several
full of
weeks.
mud.
yeah, no, there was some serious leaks there.
Right.
And we did
Yeah.
find it out there behind the,
Well,
Somebody's snow
One
machine
gave them-
crashed.
there were several.
There's
Yeah,
a whole
there
One
lot
of
of
them, yeah, your father brought the
Yeah.
excavator out.
Yeah.
and
the
that was
dialysis,
working. That was a long winter.
dialysis, whatever, we're up here in the hospital. If somebody's getting their blood, drained and repumped and the water pressure drops, that's a serious, serious problem.
Well, I agree, and I'm a medical professional, but the hospital is not a town business. That's a
Well,
private
I might be
business.
that person getting the blood.
That's
But-
a, well,
but on the
but
other
that's,
hand,
but that's a private enterprise. It's not for profit, but it's not a part
It's a
of town.
necessity of this municipality.
yeah,
Same
for
with
this
Ford.
community, I mean, look at the people that it employs,
Yeah.
Yes, it's
It's
the
an
largest,
asset to the town.
largest employer in
and I
town.
think that we need to, you know, we look at that same as we look at anybody else.
All right, well, I don't wanna
It's a
be,
plus for the town, whether it benefits the hospital or not. I hate to spend money, I'm a cheap SOB, but in this case, like I said, it's an asset that benefits the town. If we have a major fire on Main Street again, we're not blowing people's hot water heaters and stuff by sucking so much water out of the system that.
Just
Well-
gives us a little more cushion.
All right, I think we beat this.
Beat it.
yes, you have answered my questions, and thank you very much.
What's next, Ed?
That's it.
No, no.
We have the warrant itself has to be signed by the select board. And, on page one is the place for signatures.
Is that the only place?
Yes.
Hey, let's clarify that water leak here. That wasn't due to a frozen pipe. That was because our water department didn't know where the line was. They walked the line, they didn't find the leak because they weren't working on the line. Now, let's be honest about it. We wore
I
out a
thought
fire
it was
truck.
frozen that time.
No,
That was,
no.
20 years ago.
That was one of the, that was one of the,
We've had a number
theories.
of breaks over the years.
Yes, the year that we put a fire truck out there, hooked up two fire hydrants and pumped and wore out a fire truck all winter long was because Goma didn't know where the line was. I'm sorry, they walked it and they said there were no leaks. If they had walked it and knew where they were walking, they would have drowned.
Well, there were
Well, I have no idea about that,
I
but
do.
we were circumventing a section of pipe going from one hydrant to the next.
Yeah,
So we knew approximately where the problem existed. I thought it was frozen.
Now, the
Yeah,
fact
no,
is, there was
no.
multiple leaks, and then when we tried to force more water to the reservoir by shutting off Middle Street, it blew the Middle Street line because it was a piece of crap, all the hell,
it was a
and
comedy
we
of
lost
errors.
all water.
It was a learning experience.
Yeah, it sure was.
It was
cost
not a
town lot of
fun
money.
winter.
But the bottom line was, the water department didn't know where the line was, so they couldn't walk it to find the leak.
But we know now.
They walk somewhere else.
I thought it was frozen.
No.
No, there was multiple leaks in
Yeah.
different sections.
So a couple of things I'd like to address. One is, I've heard area towns have, last summer they closed their pools because of the COVID. We didn't. I think going forth, if things stay status quo, the town should consider closing the pool for the summer. It's only gonna be a short summer season anyways, and we'll save on expenses of maintenance and, staff. It'd be a big safety thing too.
Can't disagree more. We have been keeping our kids from going to school, keeping our kids from socializing. The pool's outside with social distancing and stuff, there's no reason that can't safely be operated. Plus you got another year that kids aren't gonna be able to have swimming lessons and stuff. I'm really hopeful that with this vaccine and stuff, things are gonna start turning the right direction. I think it's premature to make that kind of decision right now. And,
Well, just something to think of as summer comes.
I mean, it might be something if we get into April or May and we still got numbers spiking up here that we have to think of.
Yeah.
But we also have to be cognizant of the, plain and simple, the damage that we're doing to kids because they can't socialize, they don't have the normal function that kids have. So I think it's premature to,
Well, it's just something I threw out
Make
there,
that decision.
just to think about.
and I'm very hopeful that we'll be able to continue that. We might still have to do the social distancing, you know, we might not be able to have as many kids in one swimming lesson,
Right.
but
That pretty much is what it amounted to this past season.
Did it?
Yeah, there was a lot, we opened late,
Yeah, I know they
And-
opened, but it was really late.
yeah, there was a delay, but things had improved, considerably from March till, I don't know, it must have been, it could have been July that they opened. And they did have, swimming lessons, but they were short, it was a short period of time.
and like I said,
And they're very cautious, and I'm sure if the pandemic is, right in full force, that would be a strong consideration at the time.
but I mean, you can read all the different things
Ben, what do you?
with kids and,
I think it's certainly worth thinking about, but certainly not worth making a decision now.
Right, yeah,
Yeah.
I wasn't saying
Right.
we're
No.
gonna decide tonight.
Because I do know Bethlehem and Littleton, I believe, last year didn't open their pools. And hopefully we'll be in as good a position last year, this coming summer as we were last summer, so it's not an issue, but, yeah, I mean, it might be a decision that has to be made, but certainly not now.
Yeah, well, one of the reasons for the pool is to have supervised lifeguarded swimming for children. It was to get, part of it was to get them out of the Israel River. You know, before the pool, the kids all went to the Israel River. It was unsupervised. Kids, you know, could have drowned, maybe some of them did drown. And they're supervised and they're lifeguarded at Coloneltown and taught to swim, which they aren't if they go willy-nilly to the river. You know, it's something to be said for that. And that was always impressed upon me as for one of the reasons I started the Coloneltown pool.
Yeah,
What motivated you to say that?
I heard on the radio that other towns had done it,
So were there any untoward results from last summer?
so I could,
Said, were there any untoward results from last summer? Were there any problems with the pool after it opened? And
I don't know, Ben, do you know of anything?
I hadn't heard of any.
so,
we were lucky last summer. We really were not affected by the first wave of this pandemic in Coles County.
Yep.
Yeah, obviously that changed this fall, early winter, but again, when you read not only the effects of the pandemic, but the effects of the isolation of our kids, we have to take that into consideration too. And, you know, if they can only teach 5 kids at a time for swimming lessons, at least that's 5 kids, they have a little bit of socialization, a little bit of a normal life. And hopefully, by that time, we'll be in a position where we can normalize things a little bit more. And having daughters that teach in the system, there's a lot of concern on what's going on with our younger children and even our teenage children. So, I definitely, that should be something, if we have to do it, should be made at, I hate to say it, at the very last moment, okay, no, we've got numbers that we can't tolerate, and do it then, so.
That's how we've handled any gatherings, throughout this process. I mean, if there's a show of a spike, that we have to make changes, they're made, and, you know, programs go away, and swimming lessons would go away. They'll plan for the best, you know, worst, and hope for the best, and they will take precautions. And it had, within their childcare system this year, there were a lot of precautions taken, and they've done a good job.
Did good. Good. Next thing, a lot of talk about the ambulance rotation and the cost of a new ambulance. My thoughts were, why not just, a lot of these are aluminum bodies now, just put a new motor and transmission in them as they come up.
Like rebuilding.
Yeah, rebuild it for like 25,000 and save over 100,000.
Well, they've gone to those transport vans, which are a little less, but, I mean, that's an idea, you'd have to look at what the undercarriage and stuff look like.
Right, exactly, but, you know, if everything else is fine, I'm just thinking, that's one way to save money right there.
That's a definite possibility.
Something to look into.
That's all I got. Anybody else? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Minutes?
I make a motion,
They approved the minutes in the beginning.
Oh, did they? Oh, it must have when I went downstairs, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, probably.
I think he made
There-
I make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye?
All right.
Have a good night.
All right.